Welcome back to the fish room, everyone. We are back. Now, I'm back on maintenance day today, as always, on my weekly roundup of keeping all these aquariums looking fantastic, except for this one because it's causing me more grief than it's worth. But that's fine, it's just a little bit of hair algae. I am not bothered in the slightest by it. But I thought I'd bring you back for another maintenance session, but this time something a little bit different. Rather than what I'm looking for, I thought we would go over what I'm testing for and why and how and who, and make sure you can succeed with your aquariums from a different angle. With my background being in the fish shop trade or hobby or whatever you want to call it, I spent 15, 18 years working in a fish shop. Now, testing was a massive part, or still is a massive part, of the success of a fish shop. When you think about it, those shops have fish from all over the world, from different breeders, from different places, and a lot of them will have different requirements. So stuff from the Amazon will probably be a very low pH and a very low hardness. Stuff from the Rift Lakes in Africa is going to be a much harder water, much higher pH, and you had to keep a track of that. Now, there are a few key things that we're taught to test for in the aquariums when I was in the shop. Essentially, there's a key group that you look at. And, well, actually, it's the same ones that I look at in my fish house up here and I'll test for on a roughly weekly basis. And the same with all my aquariums downstairs. Now, those things are, if I've got my test kit here, pH, GH and KH, sorry I'm starting at the wrong end, I don't know why, but anyway, pH, GH and KH, which is the acidity, alkalinity of your water and the hardness of your water. Now, we will go through all of these things a little bit more in depth as the video goes on, but I'll give you a quick overview. And then you've got your ammonia, your nitrite and your nitrate, which is essentially your fish wastes. As the fish go to the toilet, creates ammonia, breakdown, so on and so on. Now, this is the test kit that I have used for absolutely years. This is the NT Labs Aquarium Lab. It's one of the easiest ones I find to use, and you've got all your colour charts on the back, so it makes it easier for reading and testing and getting the instructions right, essentially. Now, the other reason for making this video is I have been inundated with messages because these are now available in America, and a large proportion of you people watching are in America. So I have had loads of messages wanting me to go over how I test, what I test for, and how I use this test kit. So it's another reason to make this video so I can help you guys and girls out there succeed with your fish keeping. Now, I'm going to show you around some of my aquariums that I'm having a few little issues with, or I'm testing a bit more often because they're newer, and go through the test with you. So essentially inside, and this is my used test kit, so I don't know if everything's in there. Yeah, everything's in there. So this is my actual used test kit that I use on a weekly basis. Now, inside the box, you get all your liquids. So you get your ammonia liquids, your nitrite, your nitrate, your pH, KH, and GH. So all your liquids. And then you get all of your test vials. These stickers come separately, so you just stick them on the test tubes, and then you know you're not cross-contaminating, because some of these tests can interact with each other, and you should be washing out your test vials between each use, but if you don't and you leave a little bit of residual, I don't know, ammonia, and then you test for nitrate in that same vial, well, you're going to have a problem. It could go pink, blue, yellow, green because of the chemicals in there. The other thing you get inside the test kit is a syringe. So you get like a 5ml syringe. Now, the good thing is with that is most test kits just have a line sort of on their vial, and that's where the water's got to go up to. Now, that is a little bit risky because, well, these test kits are calibrated and worked to 5ml. Certainly on this test kit they are anyway. And if you've got a few mil extra, or even like half a mil extra, it could make the colours duller, and that means then you're not getting the right test results. So it is really good to use something that's accurate to make sure you've got the right amount of water. The last thing you get in the box is a water quality guide. Now, if I open this one up, there's all sorts of different languages in here, but you've got obviously English all down through telling you exactly what all the tests are, what, why, how, whatever. And you also get this. Now, I've got too many aquariums to use this, so I fill this up in a day, but it's got all of your test results and the dates. So if you go through this and fill it out, you can make sure then that you've got all your test results, and you can see if your pH is going down or up over the course of several weeks. It's a really good thing to have. The amount of times people would come into the shop, have a test result that's like, my pH is 8. Brilliant, what was it last week? If it's been 8 forever, then there's no real problems, as in we know that that's just your tap water. But if it was 6 last week and now it's 8, we know that there's an issue. So definitely keeping a log of your test results is key to making sure you know what your aquarium's doing. So to show you guys and girls what I test for and why and how and who, I thought I'd stay in the fish room today. So we've got our 4 main aquariums, 2 of which you can see in front of you now. Now these 2 are probably the most, best performing aquariums at the moment. So we've got the woodland riverbank with our rummy nose tetras and our pencilfish on the right hand side. Now that's doing really, really well. There's a touch of hair algae here and there, but the plants are growing fantastically. Everything is doing well. The filter's performing well. I've got no issues with that tank. The same thing can be said for the Habistax tank here. So this one, again, is a little bit different, more of a clear water tank than a black water tank, but it's performing well. There's very little algae, the plants are growing well, all the fish are happy, no health issues. So there's not really anything major that I need to test for. So I'm going to be doing a general checkup on those ones to make sure that the pH isn't slowly going down too much or maybe rising up because of the rock I've used. I'm just going to be keeping a log and a general checkup on those 2 aquariums. Now the next tank in the fish room that we are honestly suffering a little bit of issues with, essentially we've still got a little hair algae issue in here. Now I've actually worked out, or I think I've worked out, that it's the bark coming off of the tallow wood which I've got in here, and as that bark is breaking down, the hair algae seems to be latching onto it and using it as like a food source because, that's the only thing. I have put the bark in another aquarium and it grows hair algae just as quickly in there as it does in this mature one, and there's no nutrients, it's just pure tap water in there. It's not the end of the world, it's a little bit of hair algae, it doesn't look that unsightly, but I have left it to grow so I can show you guys and girls exactly what's going on in here. Now if I start suffering algae problems in the aquarium, I do generally start looking at things a little bit more in depth, so I'll be focusing on this tank that's got a few issues, a lot more than the 2 tanks that are doing really well. So I'd be starting to focus on things that could be causing and growing the algae. So it could be a build-up of nitrate in the aquarium, which is essentially a nutrient source where your fish are pooping and it's being broken down. Nitrate is the last thing, and that does act as a food source. If you haven't got enough aquarium plants growing in there quickly, then the nitrate takes over, the algae takes over, and we get a problem. It's exactly why I've left the duckweed to grow in this aquarium quite aggressively, because I thought, well, maybe it's a nitrate issue. The duckweed should use up the nitrate quicker than any plant in there, but that was a no. So I'm pretty sure now it is just this tallow wood and the bark on it that is releasing some sort of nutrient. Now the other tank that's in the fish room is our newest aquarium that we've set up, which is the bonsai tree, cherry barb tank, whatever you want to call it. So this one is going through its new stage of life. It's getting a little bit of algae, it's still finding its way essentially, but we will be testing this one over thoroughly because this one is the newest tank. We want to make sure that the filter's maturing nicely and that we're not getting any problems in there. And we also want to make sure that the nitrates aren't spiking because, maybe the plants aren't growing in quickly enough, they've not settled, they've not got their roots out and they're starting to sort of settle in. We want to make sure that all of that's right. So this one is the one that I would be focusing on most in my fish room, just because it's the newest, it's the freshest, it's the one that's going to be the most worrying. Now with the 6 cherry barbs that I've got in here, I highly doubt there is any issues with the filter, but I like to test, I like to check, I like to be thorough. Now for testing, obviously I'm not going to take you through each test on each aquarium because that would be like a 2-hour long video and no one would be left by the end of it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do each test on maybe a different tank or some of them the same tank to make sure I know exactly what's going on, and then I can talk through the results with you at the end. Now as I say, all the instructions for these are on the back of the box so you can follow it and essentially go through each one knowing what drops you need to put in when, how long you need to give it, and so on. So the first test we're going to do is our ammonia test. Now it has got 3 bottles on this one. It's essentially 5 drops, 5 drops and 5 drops. You give the test tube a mix and then you leave it for 10 minutes and read the colour against the chart. Now as the cherry barb bonsai tree tank is our newest aquarium, we're going to go with ammonia and nitrite on this one. As I've said, the algae that's growing on the sand is just so I can see if it will burn itself out over time. It's a new tank, so that algae is a fairly standard thing to happen. As long as it doesn't get to plague proportions, I'm fine with it, so I'm just keeping a close eye. Now while I'm doing this test, I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of what, how, who and when and everything ammonia is. So ammonia is your first waste product in your aquarium. It essentially gets created when your fish are going to the toilet, when your plants are breaking down. Anything organic that's breaking down in your aquarium can produce ammonia. Now with ammonia, you can't actually tell if it's in your water just by looking at it. Unfortunately, it is colourless and really smellless until it gets into high levels. Hang on, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there is no real way of telling if it's in your aquarium unless you're testing for it. Now, ammonia should be broken down by beneficial, that's the wrong one, that's number 3. Number 2. Now, beneficial bacteria in your aquarium should break down the ammonia, resulting in a 0 reading on these tests. But in a new aquariums, or aquariums 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in aquariums that are new, or aquariums that have maybe had a problem or a power cut or something like that, then it can be an issue and ammonia can spike. Or even when you're adding new fish or overfeeding, there's loads of reasons that ammonia can spike in your aquarium. Now, a weird thing with ammonia is in a pH of 7 or below, it is non-toxic and it is fairly harmless to your fish. Not ideal because it will more than likely still read on a test kit. But in a pH of 7 and below, it is non-toxic. But if your pH is above, then it can become very toxic. And essentially there is no good level of ammonia if it's above 0. 0 is what you're aiming for, and you should not get it any higher. So what do you do if you test your water for ammonia and you find out that it is really high? Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So really, when you test for it and you find out that your ammonia is high, there's several things that you can do. Let's give this one a quick mix up. And then we need a timer for 10 minutes before that one's ready to go. Now, as I was saying, if you find out that your ammonia level is high, there are several things you can do. Water changes are a big thing. Getting that water drained down, getting some fresh water in there is your first point of call because, well, you're going to dilute it. You're going to detoxify the ammonia a little bit, dilute it down, and hopefully that will give your filter a start on, well, getting on top of it. But you can use things like filter bacteria and filter starters because they will help get that bacteria going again. Or you can use things like ammonia removers. If you're in dire straits, then all of it. Water changes, filter bacteria, ammonia remover, and get that ammonia down to a 0 as quick as you can. This is essentially just a filter medium, so it's like a gravel, and it absorbs ammonia. You just put that into a little bag in your filter or around your tank, and it will start absorbing the ammonia. Now, because I'm filming and talking at the same time and trying to do a test, I can't remember if I shook that, so I'm thinking that shook, but I've set the timer for 10 minutes, so we'll put that one over to one side, get rid of these for a minute, and then we'll get on to nitrite. Next up in our test is our nitrite. Now, I've realised that my test file for nitrite is down here with GH, but this one's just a 1 bottle. It's 5 drops of that, give it a mix, and then you wait 2 minutes. Now, like ammonia, a nitrite should be broken down by your filter bacteria, so we need 5 more ml of water from the tank. Now, again, like ammonia, you will find that this is invisible to the naked eye until you test your aquarium. It is completely see-through. But it is just as toxic for your fish. It's not a good idea to have any level of this in there. You want this as close to 0 as possible. Now, this is one of the easiest tests because it's only 1 bottle, so we need to do 5 drops. Yeah, 5 drops. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Now, this can arise in new ponds where the filter bacteria is not all of a sudden kicked in, so it's not got going. I nearly knocked that test tube over then. But yeah, it can arise in new ponds. It can arise, well, just about anywhere that the filter's been disrupted or disturbed, and then you end up with a nitrite reading. Now, as I say, you want this as close to 0 as possible. But if you find nitrite in your aquarium, there are a few steps to take. Water changes are going to be key in getting your nitrite levels down, so 25 or in drastic cases 50% water changes are going to dilute that nitrite. Now again, filter starter is obviously going to be a key thing because that's going to get the bacteria back in the aquarium and hopefully get that process running down. You can also use the ammonia remover, so that gravel that I showed you, because what that will do is it will stop ammonia being processed into nitrite, thus obviously helping your filter to catch up. If your ammonia-based bacteria is breaking down more ammonia into nitrite and the nitrite bacteria is not getting a break, it is going to be, well, essentially overworked. So giving it a bit of a break with some ammonia remover may help get the cycle back on track. Next up in our testing is nitrate. Now this one you need to make sure, well actually to be fair, all of them I'd make sure you shake the bottles well. But with nitrate bottle 1, what you can find is it will settle out. So you might be able to see some of the stuff sort of floating around in there. You need to make sure you give this one a good shake for 30 seconds before using it. But it's easy again, 6 drops, give it a mix, wait 10 minutes. I thought I'd give you a bit of a different backdrop, so we're going to test nitrate on this aquarium. Now, the reason for this is this algae that we're suffering with in here could be caused by nitrate. I'm pretty sure it's caused by the wood because I've got so much duckweed and plants in here that any nitrate's just going to be used up by them. Now, nitrate is your last part of the cycle. Ammonia and nitrite are all being broken down into this. Now, this will be used, as I've said before, as a nutrient for algae and a nutrient for plants. Now, it isn't as toxic as ammonia and nitrite. As you can see on the board here, you can see the red exclamation marks here are sort of giving you a warning that you need to do something. This is like, oh dear, get it sorted quickly because, well, there might not be anything left in the aquarium. And the same for nitrite. You can see the zero's good, this is not good. But on nitrate, as you can see here, the higher you go, the more toxic it gets. You want to keep it down here. I've seen fish sort of living in and around here, but the lower you can get it, the less likely you are to have problems with algae and the less likely you are to have problems with your fish. Nitrates can be a funny one, to be honest, because you can find that some tap water sources have high or elevated levels of nitrate already in them. So you're already fighting a losing battle from the word go. As I've said, it is less toxic, so it's not so much of a worry. You don't have to worry about this, and you can battle it with filter medias and also fast-growing plants. Now, I'm hoping that I am right in thinking that this is the bark off the tree branches in this tank that is causing the algae. Now, I've got to make sure that this is all mixed up because this is the one you've got to shake aggressively. But I think this algae is from that because the amount of duckweed I've got in this tank and the amount of plants, yeah, I can't see there being any nitrates in there, but we may be surprised. There wasn't any nitrates last week. Let's see this week. Right then. I can't remember how many drops of this one. This is the one that's 6 drops. This is the one that always catches me out. It's 5 drops, 6 drops, and 5 drops. So yeah, 6 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Super. Then for 6 drops of number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, ideally, you want to be maintaining a level of 0 of nitrate. You know, the lower you've got it, the better. Now, this can be achieved, as I've said, by plants, by filter medias that'll absorb it, or by doing regular water changes. If you don't do your regular water changes, nitrate can build up over time. And as it says on the back, you know, in these lower levels, it's not so bad, but when you're getting up to here, it can be really toxic, and it's something that creeps up on you. Now, I need to set another 10-minute timer for this one, and then once that's done, I can read the results, but we're looking good at the moment, so hopefully it's going to stay 0. Now, while I've got my camera set up on this tank, I might as well use this one for the carbonate hardness test as well. Now we're on to the first of our hardness tests, which is our KH or carbonate hardness. Now this one's a little bit different. You add your aquarium water, so 5 ml, and you keep adding this drop by drop until the colour changes from blue to yellow. Oh, and make sure you count the number of drops you're putting in there. So KH, also known as total alkalinity or carbonate hardness, is essentially a measure of the buffering capacity of your water in your aquarium or pond. Now, the buffering capacity essentially relates to, well, how much it can resist pH changes. If it's got a good amount of carbonate hardness, it should not swing the pH as much as other aquariums. Now, as I've already touched upon, everything in the aquarium is trying to acidify the water. Your plant waste, your fish waste, your filter bacteria, everything is trying to acidify the water. Having a decent level of KH is actually a way of stopping that from happening. So it'll essentially mop up these acids and, well, keep your pH stable. Once you get a really low KH, your pH will start dropping, and it can then mean that your fish can get unwell, and you'll get, well, an imbalance in the aquarium that can cause issues. Now, it is important to check your KH regularly because it does get used up. Obviously, it is trying to battle this acidification all the time, so it is worth checking this every now and again. Now, around where I live, everything is really soft. The KH and GH is generally really, really low, so it'll be interesting to see what this is at this week. So there isn't really an ideal level of KH. Obviously, it depends on what fish you are trying to keep. Aiming somewhere, well, anywhere above 4 is ideal, but probably as an average, probably around the 6 to 8 mark is where most people want to be aiming. But you will have to check the fish you're keeping and the animals you're keeping to make sure you're getting it in the right range. So this is one of the first tests we're doing that's a little bit odd. So this one is the colour changing one. So we're going to be adding 1 drop at a time and giving it essentially a little swirl. And then when it goes from blue to yellow, we count the number of drops, and then that gives us our, well, essentially our carbonate hardness. Now, I highly doubt this one's going to be very high because, like I say, our tap water around here is fairly low. So we are going from blue to yellow. So let's start 1 drop, Oh, that is very blue. Can you see that on camera? Yeah, that's very blue. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops. Oh, we've got a slight yellow tinge coming. Nope, still blue. That was 5 drops. We're getting there. Is that turned all yellow yet? No. 6 drops. Oh, I think we're yellow. Just a little bit of blue at the bottom, but yeah, so we're, if I mixed it properly, probably 5, but around 5 to 6 DKH, which is really good actually. I was surprised at that. That's ideal. Now, what can I do if this was too low? What would I end up doing? I'm going to put that on before I drop it. Well, you could do more water changes. So if your tap water is a decent level, so say that tested at 3 DKH, so it is a bit too low, and you test your tap water and your tap water's at 6, in theory, regular water changes will bring that carbonate hardness up. If your tap water is really low carbonate hardness, then you would need to use like a KH buffer to bring it up. But we're sitting pretty. That is perfect, and I'm quite impressed by that. Next up, we've got pH. Now, the cool thing with this test kit is it tests pH from 6 to 9, so it's a real broad range test kit. And now this one's fairly simple. 5 ml of water, 5 drops of that, give it a mix, and then you can read it straight away. Now, I don't know, which one should we do on video? Let's do the Haberstacks tank on the left for pH, and we'll do the Rummy Nose tank on the right for general hardness. I am testing all of these as I'm filming, but for the filming, I'm just showing you one of each test rather than you having to sit through 5 pH tests. Now, pH is the measure of the acidity and the alkalinity of your aquarium water. Now, the actual scale runs from, I think it's 0 to 14. So 0 is like super acidic and 14 is super alkaline. Now, in aquarium, you shouldn't be getting anywhere near that. So 7 is middle of the scale, and then you'll go up to maybe 8 or so for your Rift Lake Valley cichlids, and you'll go down to 6 or so for your Amazonian. You shouldn't really be needing to go any further out of the brackets than that. Extreme levels of pH in your aquarium can affect your aquarium fish. So as I was saying, Rift Valley stuff likes it harder, so pHs of 7 and above. Most Amazonian stuff likes it pHs of 7 and below. Now, pH is worth checking regularly because, well, again, old tank syndrome comes into this. Hang on, I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mr. Better is very interested in this bottle. So old tank syndrome can affect your pH in your aquarium, essentially acidifying it over time. Now, the other thing with pH is it can change from morning to afternoon and evening, especially in heavy planted aquariums. What you'll find is it's well worth either checking your pH at the same time every day so you know what you're doing, or keeping a log when you're testing AM or PM so you know what's going on. Once you've tested the pH, it is a read it straight away job. So you'll be finding my pH. I have been buffering this tank because the Celestial Pearl Danios in it like it a little bit higher, so 7 and above generally. So we're probably somewhere between 7 and 8. We're not exactly 8, I don't think, but I don't know, maybe my eyes are deceiving me. But anyway, I have been buffering this water up slightly just so that they're happy, and they're doing really well in here. But there really is no correct pH. Any pH from, 6 all the way up to about 8 could be correct depending on the species that you are looking at keeping. It is just something you need to talk about with your local aquatic store and find out if you're looking at Amazonian species at maybe a pH of 6 or Rift Lake species at a pH of 8. It just does vary what you're looking at keeping. Now, what do you do if your pH is wrong in your aquarium? Well, to be honest, it depends which way you need to go. If you need to bring the pH up, you can do it via those buffers again. KH up will bring the pH up slowly. Now, you don't want to change your pH any more than 0.5. So if you're going from 7, you don't want to bring it up any higher than 7.5 in, well, every 2 or 3 days, because pH change like that can shock an aquarium and can, well, cause problems, big problems for fish. So going up is fairly simple. You can use calcium-based rocks, even though that is a little bit unpredictable, or you can use the powdered KH up and that works a treat. Bringing a pH down, so going from 7 down to 6.5 to 6, if you're keeping those Amazonian species, can be a little bit trickier, but I would say bogwoods, leaf litter, catappa leaves, anything like that is slowly going to bring the pH down. And then just check your tap water, see what pH your tap water is running at, and you should be able to work out what you need to do water change wise and treatment wise to fix your pH. Lastly, we're on to our last hardness, which is general hardness. Now this one is very similar to carbonate hardness, but you've got 2 bottles. So all you do, 2 drops of A, give it a mix, and then you keep adding B until the colour changes from pink to blue. Again, simple but different to the others. So we'll move pH to one side for the minute, and we'll clear that bottle out in a minute. Next up we've got GH, which we'll do this one on this tank here, because it'll be a bit of an interesting one, because it's a black water tank, but we've got this stone in there that might be messing around with the hardness a little bit, but the pencilfish and rummy noses are doing fine, so nothing much to worry about. So general hardness is essentially a measure of the minerals in the water, and your water is, well, soft or hard. Now if you've got lots of those minerals in there, it's obviously hard water. If you haven't got lots of those minerals, it's going to be soft water. And depending on what type of fish you're looking at keep, well, depends on what GH you want to be aiming for. So as I've touched upon with pHs and KHs and things like that, a higher GH is essentially good for your Rift Valley cichlids, maybe some live bearers, things like that. That'll be your higher GHs. In your lower GHs, you've got things like your tetras from the Amazon and angelfish and discus and things like that. Sometimes it's best to test your water first, check what your water's doing, and then buy fish for your aquarium water. Now there isn't any right answer to what level of GH you want. Like I say, it depends on the fish that you are keeping. But for soft water species, pretty much anywhere around 3 to maybe 6, something along those marks. And then for hard water species like your Rift Lake cichlids, then we'll be aiming for around 10 to 15, something like that. But always check with your local breeders and fish shops, because they may be keeping the fish in different parameters. Now this is another one of those funny tests where you've got to do a certain amount of drops and it will change colour. Now we have to do 2 of A first, 1, 2, and get that, I think it's a pink coloration that it starts off with. Let's give that a shake and a mix. Yeah, look at that, lovely vibrant pink. And then we use B and we need to get it to change colour. So we keep adding B until essentially it goes from pink to blue, and that will give us our, well, level of GH. Let's have a look. Right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 5? Well, that's sort of a purpley blue colour. Let's go one more. That'll be 6. Oh, there you go. That's got a proper blue now, look. So there we go, 6. So we're just on that upper end of the soft water scale. Like I say, rummy noses are probably ideal at, well, 3 to 6 GH. But that's perfect, really. We are just on the upper scale, so any acidification that happens in my aquarium will just bring it into the middle of where they like to be. So if that GH was too high, probably the easiest thing to do is go out and have a chat with your local store and talk to them about reverse osmosis water, which is essentially special water that you can doctor and tailor to what you want in your aquarium. But it's always worth testing your tap water, because there might be something weird going on in your aquarium that's buffering this up, and your tap water might be perfect for them. It's always just worth checking your tap water, seeing where your tap water levels are, because, well, it might be the answer to fixing your problems. But as I say, if you want to bring your GH down, then really reverse osmosis water is going to be your best bet. If you're wanting to bring your GH up, the use of rocks like ocean rock or oyster shell or any of those calcium sort of based stones and rocks will help buffer the water up. But you do have to be careful, because it's a bit of a weird one to use. You'll find that it could buffer it up massively, it could buffer it up small amounts. So little and often and no dramatic changes is key. Now obviously I've tested all the aquariums throughout this video, but this is one full set from one aquarium. So I thought I'd just give you a quick overview of what all these tests mean essentially. Now what you've got to start off with is your ammonia. So your ammonia, like I've been saying, is your pure waste product. And you can see that that is a nice sort of yellowy colour. So we are right down on this 0. If it does start creeping up into these higher regions, then really you want to act quickly. Water changes done, get some ammonia remover in the filter, get some new filter bacteria in there, and get that back on track, because it can cause problems once it gets high. The next one we've got is our nitrite. So this one is showing 0, so there is no coloration to that whatsoever. So we are right down here. And again, it's a similar situation to this. At 0, no problems, no need to worry. But as soon as we start creeping up into these higher regions, getting filter bacteria bacteria in there, getting some water changes done. It's going to help to bring that back down, and you want to do that quite quickly. Now the next one is this one, I believe. Yeah, that one. Good job it's got all the stickers on. I wouldn't have remembered which one was which. But again, this is nitrate, so you can see it's at a nice 0, very, very low. That's because I've got a lot of plants in these aquariums and it uses up this as a food source really quickly. As I've said with nitrate, it can creep up a little bit and you're still fairly safe, but the higher it goes, the more toxic it can get. It is one of the least toxic, but if you do find it is really high, test your tap water, make sure you're doing some water changes if your tap water's okay, and yeah, maybe get some filter medium in there that will absorb that. Now next up on the bottom row, where's our pH? GH, KH, pH, here we go. So this one is a little bit higher than I'd normally say. It's probably around the sort of 7.5 to 8 mark. It's not that full blue, but yeah, it's a little bit higher than my tap water normally is around here. But that is because I've been buffering this aquarium, or this certain aquarium, because it's the Celestial Pearl Danio aquarium. I've been buffering this one to make the pH a little bit higher for them because they don't tend to like really soft water. So that's perfect, right in the middle of those ticks, right in the middle of the range where I want to be. The last two, obviously the colours don't really give us a sort of a reading. We have to count the number of drops that we put into these two to work out what carbonate hardness and what general hardness. So you can see that the blue one here is the GH, where it's turned from that pink to that blue, and this one is the KH, where it's turned from that blue to that yellow. And yeah, both of these are right in the middle of the line sort of thing. So we're running, from memory, I think we were running about 6 and 4 across these two. So again, right in the middle. But if you find that your pH, KH or GH is running differently, really it's going to be testing your tap water to see where your tap water's at, and then maybe doing some water changes if your tap water's if your tap water's better than your aquarium essentially. But it does depend on how you're working. There's loads of different buffers, there's loads of different additives like rocks and things that will help buffer this. And then if you're going the other way, bogwoods and leaves and leaf litter, botanicals, all of that will help bring the pH down. So again, it's a bit more of a complex sort of thing to talk through quickly, but at least that will give you an idea. But this aquarium is sitting really well. So there we go, that is all the aquariums tested. That was actually a lot more work than you guys and girls would have been privy to, because yeah, I tested every aquarium, 6 tests, and only showed you one of each. So yeah, that was quite good. But no weird results, no bad results. All the nitrates are really low, like even the chili rasbora tank that's suffering a little bit of algae. I think that duckweed is just sucking it up essentially. And the cool thing is the buffering that I've been doing on the chili rasbora tank, just to make sure, not chili rasboras, I'm going to start that again. The buffering I've been doing on the Celestial Pearl Danio tank has worked a treat and means that they are a little bit higher. I need to go and wash all my test tubes out. I normally test like this because that, allows you to stand them up in there, but for the sake of the video I didn't. But I've got to go and clean all these out now and drop bottles on the floor. But I hope that's been useful for you. Drop any questions into the comments if you want to know anything more, and me or the rest of the fish keeping community that are lurking in the comments will try and help you out. But I'm hoping that will give you guys and girls a really good overview of what you're testing for, why you're testing for it, and hopefully how to fix each problem. Well, that was my plan anyway for this video. Hopefully it's been helpful. I'm going to go and wash out my test tubes because you need to make sure they're clean before the next run, because it could skew the results for the next one. So yeah, everything's looking good in the fish room, which means no extra work for me messing around with water. Everything I've done in the past few weeks has meant that everything is perfect. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.